Mr. Dion Rambus.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Kenny. And it's funny because I had no intention to be the crypto coach. It's very similar to my background in banking. Never intended to be in the banking field, but ended up there after playing basketball at A&M. And Snyder Washington, actually, who's an Alabama A&M legend, gave me a job at AmSouth Bank, and there went my financial career. So here we are, 15, almost 20 years later, and I'm the crypto coach, where cryptocurrency didn't even exist, right, when I started that job.
That's right. Well, listen, we've got, and I actually want to have you come back on, maybe create maybe a series of conversations about Bitcoin so that we can really educate the population out there. Just start somewhere at the beginning for me and help me understand, what is this thing that people are calling Bitcoin?
Well, let's kind of do the history of it, and you probably shouldn't really start with Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about the history of commerce, which goes back, to caveman times, right? I mean, if you and I were bartering, right, because that's the first system of commerce, is the barter system. If you had some chickens and I have some goats and we have a need for each other's item, right, we generally determine how many chickens is worth how many goats, and who is in the middle of that transaction between you and I? No one. Throughout history, that's been the way the barter system worked, and we determine the value of our said goods. And in the last couple hundred years, that system has truly been tainted and manipulated with something we call fiat currency or paper money, which, most people think fiat currencies are backed by their sovereign government, which essentially still says they're backed by nothing. They moved the gold standard from our money, the United States dollar, back in 1971 during Nixon's term. And when the gold standard was removed from our paper money, it literally did become just paper. And so it's been manipulated quite a lot, not just in the United States, but throughout every government. And so when you look at that system of manipulation where paper can just be printed almost unlimited. I mean, when you look at our history, just the last decade or so, we've printed more money than we've had in circulation in 200 years of the country's history. About 10 times more money's been printed in just the last 8 to 10 years. So that just tells you how watered down our monetary system is. So in the middle of that downturn, around 2008, there was an anonymous person, and I'll say his name is Satoshi Nakamoto, who is the pseudo creator of Bitcoin. This white paper was an explanation of a digital form of cash. Literally, that was the name of Bitcoin, and a digital form of cash. Well, that white paper was being, just exposed all over the elite of programmers, the best of the best software programmers in the world were getting this information, and no one knew what to make of it. And then around the first part of 2009, Mr. Nakamoto actually started to write the program with some of the elite people who had been getting his messages. And it went from one computer, which essentially what Bitcoin is, it's an online algorithm. It's literally an equation that will calculate 21 million Bitcoins. So because it's math, it can't be manipulated, which is the genius behind it.
Why 21 million and not 19 million?
I don't really know if there's a reason why he chose that particular number. Maybe just because that algorithm worked for 21 million. I don't know if there was really a reason for 21 million. I will tell you this, though. That was the first of all digital currencies just because of the ability to have an unhackable protocol. So we've had the internet for 30 plus years now. And we all know that it's very hackable thanks to our military being hacked, Hillary's emails, right? So we all know that it's a very weak system. The binary coded internet that we have is very hackable. And this new software, if you will, that was brought to life by Mr. Nakamoto and this community of what's called miners, were solving these equations. And if you linked your computer into this algorithm and began to solve these equations, being a coder, right? I don't know the technical side, Kenny. I'm not a software guy. I'm a banker, right? I understand money and financial systems, not the software side. but I've read up on it enough to understand it that, you know, man and woman in politics and governments will lie, but math never lies. And so when you can write a software program that has to be solved through the mathematical calculations, then you cannot manipulate it. And so that's essentially what Bitcoin is. 21 million calculations that have a program in it that cuts the calculations in half every 4 years. It's called halving. So essentially, the 21 million coins will not be finished or completely mined, right? They're not mining like gold and silver. They're mining mathematics, but they're still developing those coins or digging them out, if you will. So that won't happen. The 21 million won't finish until around the year 2140, right? I hope to be here, but it's highly unlikely we won't be. And so just think that today, after 8 years of Bitcoin's run, which it started from one computer to the next computer to the next computer, whoever linked their computers into this network, have now created in 8 years the largest computer network on the planet. Even if you combine IBM, Microsoft, and all the big boys together, Bitcoin is literally pulling more power than all those computer networks combined. That's how many computers have been attached to this network to create the Bitcoin's value. So many people say, well, it has no intrinsic value. Well, it does, because essentially you have to have the hardware and the power